My guest is Ophelia Rigaud, author of The Caring Leader. So part of caring is talking about nurturing neighborhoods.
Yes.
But as I understand from your book, neighborhoods aren't necessarily the people who share the same postal code.
No.
It's more than that.
Yeah, and in the 70s, researchers led by McKnight decided that they wanted to look at neighborhoods because there was this kind of idea that there were good neighborhoods and there were bad neighborhoods. And in the bad neighborhoods, which was low income, marginalized community, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, in those neighborhoods, it was poor. And a lot of the times, society felt that they were bad. There wasn't anything good in those neighborhoods. And he brought a team, and they went with bus loads, and they went in. And what happened, they researched and found that in these communities, there were good things happening. People were supporting each other because, for example, if there wasn't a hospital nearby, because all this thing is based on taxes and how many things, people will support their community. There was people offering babysitting, and they weren't necessarily family members. It was sort of like, oh, Miss Joe is across the street, and I leave my kid here. So this was an idea that within all communities, there are nurturing neighborhoods. And sometimes a neighborhood could be a culture. So a group of people from cultures, they're not living all together. Could be a church, we come together. But the idea is that people in a community nurture each other and find solutions outside of like the political idea of creating community. Sort of like people who live in farm country. Farms are miles apart, and how do they know when one farmer is having a problem? Because they're nurturing.
Right.
And you hear a lot about farmers like that. We've seen it, that they wouldn't have been able to survive.
Well, let's talk barn raisings.
Right.
Was that an example of a nurturing neighborhood?
Yes.
Yeah, and even if they did show up for the food and the booze, it was still the fact is they had their own work to do on their farms, but they would give up a certain number of days to do a barn raising because that's not something you can do by yourself.
And that's so true, but even if you go back historically, this concept, like the team and the researchers coined this term, but it wasn't that it was something that wasn't happening. This was organically happening throughout history. If you look at, in indigenous communities, they were nurturing neighborhoods. They found ways to solve problems because they had to, right? They had to have it. And what I think that in our society, we just think, as you said, that a neighborhood is a postal code.
We tend to.
We do. We think that's a neighborhood. And that's what our, because you vote in this neighborhood and this neighborhood gets so much taxes. But the idea of a nurturing neighborhood and why it's important when people are just thinking about it is that we have to think of our neighborhood as our community, as people around us, not just in a certain area. And I'll give you a simple example. Many people who attend a religious organization, their members are not all around that church. They come for or church or synagogue or whatever, but they nurture their membership.
Okay.
Right,
Yeah,
so there's some connection.
They often refer to their church family.
Their church family, exactly.
And that means that you look out for each other the same way that a family member looks out for each other.
Yes.
So in a sense, an organization where you have a common interest could be a neighborhood or a family in a sense.
Yeah, and that's really true because if I'm working at an organization and you're working at that organization, we have something in common, right? We could be really believe in the cause or whatever it is, but there's something in common. And organizations, I feel, have gotten away and have lost the sense that their organization is also a neighborhood. People bring their problems to work. They don't leave it at their door, right? If somebody dies and they have to go to work 2 weeks later, they're still there. But it's an opportunity for leaders in that organization to say, oh yeah, how can I nurture this neighborhood? And if we see a collection of people outside of a postal code as a neighborhood, we think of it differently. Because when I think of neighbors, I think of somebody friendly, You know, we used to have this was a safe place. You know, those signs, I can't remember, but I remember.
The block parent.
The block parent,
was
right?
on-
This was a
yes.
safe place that you could go. I really believe that we need to get back to that, but not also in just a postal code, but within organizations, within community groups, within a board. How can we nurture our people?
Now, gets back to a neighborhood, as in sharing a postal code.
Yeah.
That, because that is a relationship that you
Yes,
have.
yes.
You know, you have a certain amount in common because you've chosen to move to that area.
Exactly.
So I think sometimes we look at our neighbors and we say, well, I'd have nothing in common with them.
Yeah.
They're a different color than I am. They
Exactly.
dress differently than I do.
Their food smells differently.
Their food is different, or they're way younger than I am, or way
Yes.
older than I am.
Yes.
And so we just kind of say, but you know, it's a funny thing how you find things in common with people, even though on the surface you have nothing in common with them. But we have you just have to find it.
And I think in that area, so, you know, you might have people who, I've lived here for 40 years, and you hear people saying, my neighborhood has changed. It's not the same from all of those things. But think about it. When you moved in 40, 50 years ago, you were a young family. You
Right.
moved in because there was a park across the street. Now you have younger families coming in who are moving in.
Because there's a park across
Because
the
there's
street.
a park across the street.
Why is that different? They're just 20, 30,
And you
40
can
years
offer
behind.
some advice if they're willing. But you know what?
Right.
You can even start, you both have sidewalks.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe
Right.
they moved in, and because what if it's a single parent and she has, or he or she has kids?
What-
Offer them, you know, can you help them with your snow remover?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
What if they're new to Kingston?
Yes.
And even come from a different country,
Yes.
and they don't know anybody, and there they are in this neighborhood, and everyone's staying away from them because they look different, and we won't have anything in common.
So I'll give you a perfect example of
Okay.
nurturing neighborhood.
All right.
I moved into an area raising my niece and didn't think about it, right? And one morning I'm hearing the bang at my door. It was so snowing. I'm thinking, what is that? And you know, I'm hearing this bang. My neighbor came and he was shoveling my snow.
Oh boy.
And I said, what are you doing? And I had just had surgery, and he knew
Oh.
that because we were already chatting in the summer, right?
Yeah.
He says, I know you can't do it because you're recuperating. And we start to develop, you know, a neighborly relationship. And it was shocking
Right.
because you don't expect people to be kind. And I had to think about that. I'm thinking that's where I really, when I was writing, you know, talking about neighborhood and thinking about it, I really felt that was so important to put into my book, to talk about nurturing neighborhoods.
A similar thing happened to me, and it led to a really wonderful friendship. It was so much snow this one day, and I'm out there, and I got a certain point, and I thought, I'm cold and I'm tired. I'm going to go in, get warm, have a little rest. While I'd been shoveling, there's my 20-something neighbor over there shoveling her driveway, and we're chatting back, hollering back and forth, and she suddenly started shoveling toward me. And I realized she'd finished her driveway, and she's shoveling my sidewalk, and closer. I'm cold, I'm tired, I want to go inside, but I thought I cannot leave her here to shovel my driveway, so I just
Yes.
kept at it. We just had so much fun in all this. Well, what that led to was having dinner back and forth with her
Yes.
boyfriend, but they were in their 20s, so I'm 45, 50 years older. And so I'd invite them over for dinner. Well, then they'd invite me over for dinner, but they'd say, but can we have it at your place? So they would bring all the food already, and I think they lived rather modestly, put it that way. And they didn't want me to see the inside of their apartment, but it turned
But
out
you
to be,
nurtured them.
it was such a nice relationship that we had, and they were great at shoveling the snow, just I'd suddenly find my recycling boxes up on my porch instead of left at the
Yes.
street. Just those little things.
Little
that
things, little
turned out to
things.
be a wonderful friendship, but I wouldn't have thought that a couple of 20-somethings would be interested in.
Because sometimes
with
we have our own
me.
bias, right? We have our own little bias, or
Yeah.
or you're cautious because I don't want to be rude, I don't want to be
Right.
intrusive. But saying hi, and if that person doesn't respond, and I say give it 3 times, then they're not interested. That's fine.
That's fine.
Right? And you know, even when you have troublesome neighbors,
Right.
and that happens in our society, right? We have
Sure
people that
does.
are reluctant,
Oh,
they're
yeah.
resistant, they're angry, but they're in our world. They live next door to us, right? And you try. I just think always try to be polite. Yes, set your boundaries. If they've crossed your boundaries, you tell them. And I've had to deal with some difficult neighbors. But I've learned that for some people, they're doing their very best they can.
Often they are.
Right?
Yes.
And they don't, sometimes they don't have the experience or the skills. And I remember one time with my neighbor, they weren't cleaning. We shared a pathway, and they weren't cleaning their pathway, and it was frustrating. And you know what it was? They didn't have a shovel.
As simple as that. They
And I
just
said-
didn't have a shovel.
And
Right.
the little son was coming up, and he looks at me, so he goes, "Lady, can we borrow your shovel? I can't climb the stairs."
Ah,
And as a
that's-
little child, I
Yeah.
thought that's the reason why.
Right.
So I said to them, "You can use my shovel anytime." He goes, "Really?"
It's such a simple thing.
And
isn't
I
it?
was really mad at them sometimes. You know what I mean?
bet. It was like, oh,
come on,
get with it.
But
yeah.
you know, children are so innocent. They just ask because they
Right.
feel that that
Right.
they can. Are we the best
Right.
of friends? No, we don't go into
Right.
each other's house, but we're more polite. And we, you know, something comes on my door by accident, by delivery, I knock and tell them, you know, and things like that, because it's about caring,
Absolutely.
right? It's about caring, you know, and caring
Right.
for people.
And there's so much more about that in your book.
Thank
and,
you.
About nurturing neighborhoods. It's available. Google it.
Google it.
Right,
You can get it on
right.
Amazon, but just Google the Caring Leader or my name and it'll pop up.
Thank you very much for being here today.
Thanks you for having me.
Okay.